Michigan, Oklahoma, big matchup ahead, probably the game. Because, Chris, when I evaluated this game, I've never seen two teams that are more similar that are in different conferences than Oklahoma and Michigan. Because when you talk about the narratives that are behind it, John Mateer, one of the most sought-after transfer quarterbacks, to Bryce Underwood, one of the most sought-after high school recruits in the last 10, 15 years. So overall, when you look at this game, what's the big narrative that's going to come forward when you see these two teams get ready to play this Saturday?
Well, I think both of them are really good on defense. They've got NFL talent, a lot of spots. To me, Oklahoma feels like the more developed offensive team at this point. Mateer was not a guy, it took him a couple years to develop. So comparing him to Underwood is unfair because at 18, Underwood, I think, is 19.
I mean, height-wise, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think it's going to be, is John Mateer the guy that Oklahoma hoped it was getting, right? And maybe throw Jaden Ott in there too, because he carried once for 3 yards. Underwood's going to be a big storyline because, the money paid to him and all the hype coming in. But it's tough for a guy to win his first road start. You can ask Arch Manning about that, who's a lot older. But I think, to me, the storyline to me is going to be, is John Mateer everything Oklahoma hoped he would be? Because this is a terrific chance to show it.
I think you're absolutely right. I think another thing that you can see, offensive line-wise, because when you look at both games that they played, they didn't show their cards offensively. And that's saying something, knowing that John Mateer had over 400 yards of offense by himself. So I think what's so unique about this is that whenever you get into that game this Saturday, there's going to be a whole lot more wrinkles that are going to be thrown that way towards both defenses, and really interested to see that. Who do you think, in your opinion, is going to be the X factor going into this game for Oklahoma?
Oh, goodness. Maybe Jaden Ott. Again, I don't know if last week was just like, okay, he missed part of camp and we're playing Illinois State, we should have this under control. But his range of performance in his career, Lucas, is big. You look back to what he was doing at Cal a couple of years ago. Last year got hurt, was pretty ordinary. But I think a lot of people wanted him in the transfer portal, and by a lot, probably almost everybody. To me, if Jaden Ott is the guy that can give you, 100 yards on the ground and 50 yards of pass catching, as opposed to the guy that barely made a dent last week, I mean, that's a big range right there.
And I think, too, like you mentioned 2 years ago at Cal, guess who was his quarterback then? Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
Dual threat guy. Guess who's his quarterback now? Dual threat guy, John Mateer. I do expect Ott to play a little bit more. Have you heard anything regarding his – because he had – did he tear his ACL, or he had a knee injury last year with Cal?
No, I haven't. But to be fair, I haven't looked. One bad thing about the first couple of weeks is you're having to look at 16 games. Whereas when we get into the SEC schedule and it's all SEC on SEC, there's a lot less to cover. And I think just in the busyness of the week, I didn't look into it. But I mean, hey, he was well enough to play at least one snap a week ago. So, maybe that means something.
Do you think Oklahoma's going to rotate backs on a consistent basis like they did last week?
I mean, I think if I'm guessing they are, and they did have some success with that. And of course they got a quarterback who can run like the wind too, which, takes some carries away from your running back room.
I think it's going to be fun up front. I think R. Mason Thomas going up against that Michigan offensive line, that's going to be film work for him. And I'm really, really intrigued to see what he's got overall. I think he's probably top 3 in my opinion when it comes to D lineman in the 26 draft cycle. I think he could potentially have himself a clinic offensive on the defensive side of the ball. Michigan-wise, offensive line, that's a young group. And a team that lost quite a bit from last year. You had, I think, a true freshman that was going to start coming out of high school. He gets hurt. Now you bring in another guy in there. And you can look back last week to their game against New Mexico, and you can say, well, it was only 34-17, and they struggled, obviously. No, they didn't, really. I mean, I think defensively you did pretty well establishing the line of scrimmage, and I think Michigan-wise, Underwood's as advertised, in my opinion, and Sharon Moore said in the presser that he wasn't surprised with his performance.
Yeah, that was one of those games when you looked at the box score, you were a little puzzled how it was that close. I think New Mexico got a lot of its yards in two long drives and cashed in. And look, that's New Mexico's a bottom 5 or 10 team in the FCS. So take it for what it's worth. I guess you could say under any circumstance, maybe it shouldn't have been that close, but openers are weird sometimes. I think to me, Michigan last year was defense first, right? You had a reloading year after the Natty. And I question, Haynes was pretty good for them last week, albeit against a bad defense. But I just feel like Oklahoma's ahead in terms of playmakers and things like that. Now, offensive line, you brought that up earlier. It's going to be interesting because that was an issue for Oklahoma all last year. We presume they're going to be better. Was Illinois State a great litmus test for that? Probably not. Michigan's going to be a much stiffer test in that regard with the defensive talent it's got in the front seven.
And from what I heard, I've seen keyboard warriors all across YouTube, and I've seen messages for them that say, "Oh, Oklahoma's going to beat them by 17. Oh, we're going to see a lot of these true freshmen." No. I don't expect that at all. I think that battle up front is going to be one that you need to look at if you are on both sides of the ball. It's about who's going to establish the line of scrimmage most. That's what I think is going to be the big key to the game in this one. But overall, I do have Oklahoma winning this one, knowing that, like you mentioned already, Chris, they are the more experienced team. They have the more experienced play caller and Ben Arbuckle. And going up against a program like Michigan that I just don't think that they're quite ready just yet to take that next step forward. But this is only the building blocks for what should be a pretty good season for both programs.
Yeah, you're going to points maybe at a premium, but I just think Oklahoma's ability to score them feels like it's less in doubt.